Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first week of the 2023 Risen Fall Split. I am your colorcaster for this evening, and joining me all the way from EU, it's Drake. How are you doing today, Drake?
I'm doing fantastic, Quacks. I'm so excited to see these two teams face off. Ascendant 5 and Arctic Ace, the double A's going on. I mean, I'm super excited. First time casting in fall, first time casting full time. Matt was telling me backstage that he finally took me off the bench and he's regretting it already. But either way, good to be here. It's only 9 p.m. here, so tons of action to watch for the rest of the night.
Yeah, and I think that both of these teams have a decent amount of pairs of eyes on them when it comes to the season. Arctic Ace are obviously new to Risen. These are players that have not played in Risen before, so expectations for them are a little bit, muddy. There aren't a lot of people who know these players, and I think that that could definitely help, for potential surprises. Maybe they'll end up being really good and come out of the gate exploding, and that would be really exciting to see, I guess, especially against a team like the Ascendant 5, who all five players, I'm sorry, four of the players actually have played in Risen before. They have a new mid laner, Simon 44 Cool, who is joining them for the fall split. And these guys have played together. They've played in Risen. And overall, there are, preset expectations for this team to do well. They've had a historically decent win rate at, I believe, around 60%. So it is definitely going to be a series of, expectations and defying those expectations in the case of Arctic Ace.
100%. And obviously, you could even say that Arctic Ace have no expectations on them. They have no bars held against them going into this game. So they are fighting with a lot less stress, a lot less pressure on their shoulders. And they're going out there to prove themselves, right? So they're going to be going in pretty fresh, I would say. Obviously, I haven't been able to follow Arctic Ace before they got into here, into Risen Dominate. They might have participated in other tournaments in the past, but as a newly established team, we're definitely going to be seeing a lot of new stuff coming out of them, and we could be completely surprised, right? Because you were talking about Ascendant 5 being established, about them being in past seasons of Risen, and how this team has proven themselves already. But you also mentioned 60% win rate, right? This team isn't god tier. It isn't a team that's unbeatable by any means. And Ascendant Arctic Ace, definitely has a chance to be able to beat Ascendant if they just come in with a new, fresh outlook and honestly just play their own game, right?
Yeah, and I mean the Ascendant 5, In these first couple of weeks when you do have like things to look at from teams, you have stats available on the Risen Esports page. A lot of these players are well known, so you kind of already have this expectation of what they're going to play. And I think the Ascendant 5 have a very clear, focus on how they enjoy playing the game. They love playing for Prince. He is definitely the star of the show, and that really favors them because this is more or less an 80 carry centric meta. Bot has put a lot of heavy emphasis, and usually when you have the winning bot lane, you're more likely to win the game. So Prince being able to be in his sort of comfort zone, acting as that hyper carry that the team enjoys playing around, definitely puts them at an advantage, I would say, before teams can get like a solid read on how they might change. But then on the other hand, in the current meta, we see a lot of junglers, Jarvan, Xin Zhao, basically any champ that can abuse the sort of Spear of Sojin, Gore Drinker combo, is seen as highly valuable. We are playing on the new patch 13.17, so those changes have gone through. So I wouldn't be surprised if Imaginary Champ, they are on blue side, they just go straight for the Jarvan or the Xin Zhao, unless those are both banned. In which case, you're leaving up the ADC, you're leaving up Astro Hailstorm Storm to play a lot of their comfort picks, and that can never really be good. So Arctic Ace, really curious to see what they are going to ban for those first three champions, because there are a lot of options that the Ascendant 5 have for their first pick.
Yeah, and it doesn't even, like you said, it doesn't even have to be meta per se, right? We also look at Simon 44 Cool, an absolute Vanguard phenomenon player. He only plays this champion in solo queues, so you can even lean towards those picks in leagues like this where it's not the upper echelon of play. You can outmaneuver enemy players by playing a champion that you're super comfortable on, even if they're not extremely oppressive in the meta at the moment. And I mean, thinking towards the mid lane, there aren't any champions that really stick out like a sore thumb, like you were talking about with the J4, like you were talking about with some of the ADC picks at the moment. So we have a lot to look at when we're looking at this draft, and obviously that's all assuming that Prince actually gets into game, because he does have a couple of internet issues going on right at the moment. So for now, at least, there is no ADC on Ascendant 5, and 4v5 is a little bit difficult. Usually, I think that's a forfeit unless you have a random sub to come in last minute. So we'll have to see, obviously, how that all works out and whether that even works out in the first place. But as we look ahead towards these games, like you were saying, it is the first game of the season. And I was going to mention that when we're looking at predictions and how we thought this was going to play out, I personally think that Arctic Ace are going to come out with a bang, and they're going to just overperform to an extent that we haven't ever expected, right? And if we're looking at the predictions, I put a 2-0 for Arctic Ace. I believe you put a 2-1 for Ascendant 5. You want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I think Ascendant 5, communication really is, the sort of bread and butter to what I feel makes a good team. And the Ascendant 5, they're no strangers to playing with each other. Like I said, Simon 44 Cool, new member, so, maybe he is exempt from this, but the rest of the players, the rest of the members, have played with each other before, played in Risen before, and I really think that that is the most important thing to have in the first, few weeks. And not only that, but Mr. Dex, the jungler, I believe, for Arctic Ace, is a sub. And I believe for a good time, the support for Arctic Ace is also not a support main. So I do think that those two things, while they wouldn't be necessarily game losing or series deciding, I do think that Ascendant 5 have the advantage on paper, but we've seen what happens when you just predict things on paper. Upsets are possible. I definitely think that Arctic Ace have the potential to take a game off, maybe even take this series. That's why I sort of put 2-1, because I do think that the sort of unpredictability and unknowing nature of the team, not playing in Risen before, can give them an advantage, specifically in draft. And the Ascendant 5 might not be prepared for what they have.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. And obviously, there's other factors as well. Like, I think that there's definitely a statistic somewhere where the first game of the season tends to go 2-0 and extremely abruptly. But we're getting into draft. It looks like blue side will be picking first. A5, sorry, banning first. A5 is looking to ban Elise, and that's probably just going to be a target ban over towards Mr. Drex. Do you have any statements on Elise in the meta right now, or is that just completely a target ban towards a one trick?
Yeah, I would assume that that's mostly a target ban, or at least did actually recently get buffs, so is a little bit stronger, but those buffs haven't really amounted to anything win rate wise or, play wise in competitive play at all. Champion is really good at sort of exploding the game out early on, so I do think that, it denies a little bit of early pressure along with comfort, and I'm sorry, A5 can definitely sit easy in the early game knowing that they might not get level 3 tower dove.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that these bans are a little bit interesting. Seraphine is going towards 1 to 100 in the mid lane. I don't know if she's necessarily something that you have to be super terrified of, but definitely banning comfort away for the moment. We were talking about maybe a little bit of an emphasis towards what's meta, what's good, and what these players should be playing. But we're seeing Graves ban, we're seeing Veigar ban, a lot of champions that are maybe just target bans towards people who are one tricking stuff. Like we were talking about, Veigar not really that prevalent in the meta. It looks like a Samira. If this comes through, I'm 100% committing towards, yeah, we're just banning comfort.
Yeah, just banning comfort, it looks like. But yeah, the Samira ban, I can understand a little bit. The champion obviously can be a three-way flex and is pretty decent in every single role. I've seen so many people complain about the Samira pick being broken, specifically in the AD carry role. And it looks like A5, they have the first pick. The Jarvan is up, but they are actually going to go for the Ivern. And AA heard that, and they might be responding with the meta, number one most picked jungler on the patch. And it looks like they are.
And then they're hovering another meta jungler. We'll have to see if that ends up getting locked in. But Ivern and J4 are both really strong junglers at the moment, so it is going to be a little bit of a clash of mentalities here, which champion is actually better. And obviously, they both have an emphasis towards one or the other. But the Maokai getting locked in is a little interesting for me. I assume that's going to go towards the top side, but it can be flexed towards the support role as well. I
Mhm.
don't know what the response is here because it's very hard with flex picks to respond in turn with maybe the role that you think that that champion is going to go towards. So sometimes you need to branch out, maybe a mid lane and an ADC pick. Yeah, go with something comfortable in the ADC role. Zaya is going to get picked up by Prince, moving swiftly towards the support role. It's a Nautilus as well, and definitely a very strong combination down there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a Maokai support, given that for a good time, the support actually does play jungle as his main role, and sort of being able
Yeah.
to, going back to that comfort point, you have a champion that you are comfortable with playing on your main role, and so it kind of can transfer over to, an off role if that champion is still meta, because Maokai, like you said, has several different functions. He can be a jungler, a top laner, and a support, and it looks like AA are actually going to go with Zeri here. So a lot of engage forming here for Arctic Ace. Have a decent amount of flex here. I actually like where they're going with this so far, and it looks like the solo laners for both teams are the ones that are open.
Yeah, it looks like there is going to be a Yone Ben as well. So targeting towards that mid lane, Cassiopeia is going to be one given over in response by A5, and that's just to make sure that 1 to 100 doesn't get his most comfortable champion. Obviously,
Hmm.
Yasuo is an interesting one. I'm not sure um, why we're so afraid of that one. I guess maybe the coordination with Nautilus and with Ivern is just too scary at the moment. But as these bands both have finished out, Malzahar as well, it's definitely looking like it's going to be target on these comfort picks, and Red Side has this first pick. I have to assume that it's going to be top side, and there it is, Renekton.
Yeah, before Renekton here, so they are going to be giving their mid laner, it looks like, comfort, and I definitely think that 1 to 100 is a player that you can see being a carry point for Arctic Ace. So I do like that they're leaving mid lane up. I think something maybe like a Syndra could be good here for 1 to 100 if he decides to play that. It denies a lot of engage with the scatter the weak, and a decent amount of poke to match. And it is good to
Ooh.
follow up on engages that have been drafted by AA. And it looks like A5 going to lock in the Cassante as a response. This is definitely a matchup that I'm not too familiar with the matchup, but I do know that Cassante does like to go the grasp in scenarios like this. So definitely going to be able to match Renekton's potential, fighting in the early game. And that's really when you need to be worried about Renekton. He definitely does fall off toward that late game. And it looks like A5 might be going and stealing away the Syndra, but
Ooh.
no, it's actually going to be an Ari at the last second, solidifying A5's comp as
There's no way it's Asol.
yeah, I'm really not sure about Asol here. It feels like there are a bunch of things that can cancel his flight and his ability to sort of get in there in the middle of a fight with his team, but at the same time, the Cataclysm plus the Aurelion Soul Ultimate is a good
Mm.
combo, and it looks like actually A5 going to do a classic switch around and going to lock in the Swain here. So I do like that what A5 have drafted here. I think that the comp has a very clear direction. I think that A5 also have a similar direction. It feels like both of these comps, they want to engage. I feel like A5 has a little bit more ability to disengage with something like the Cassante. Just taking a player out can be really useful, especially if there is really only one Fed member of the Arctic Ace squad. So we'll have to wait and see sort of how they play this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a difficult one to predict in our shoes because we haven't quite seen Arctic Ace play at the moment, so we can't really put names behind these characters that we're seeing on our screen, and so we have to look at face value just what the champions are, and honestly, the interactions in these team fights and just holistically the way these two teams want to play around each other, it's pretty skill expressive, I would have to say. Like J4 and
Hmm.
Renekton in the early game, they need to be able to make something happen in order to garner a lead and then actually be useful towards the middle game, right? And
Yep.
alternatively, A5 need to be able to hold out for long enough that they can scale towards those later stages. And Ivern is really good at doing that. So it will come down to the way that these two teams play out this early game and moving into the mid game stages. But at the end of the day, it will be team fights. It will be very close, no matter how these two teams play in the early game. And I think that it's honestly decided at the 20-minute mark ish. And if J4
Yeah.
falls behind at that point, then AA can definitely be in a little bit of a sticky situation.
I would also definitely be looking at this Renekton to be a potential menace to A5 because if you guys don't remember, Renekton's W is actually a shield breaker, which is a direct counter
True.
to, the Ivern, the Nautilus. So this Xayah has to be really careful if this Renekton does get ahead in the laning phase. If Sir Raven can manage, to have a really good, time in that laning phase, be fed with about 1 to 1.5 items after those turrets do drop, then the Xayah definitely has to be really careful. It can be really dangerous. And I definitely can see both supports this game taking cleanse. I think for Zeri, it's a little bit more unfortunate because as Zeri, we did get the cleanse changes where it no longer resets upon takedowns, but Zeri is still one of those champions I feel that is really good with taking the Flash Ghost. Um, but nonetheless, is probably going to want to take cleanse in this game. You have the charm, you have the Nautilus, you have the Ivern. There are so many tools that can just lock you down. And on the other hand, you have Xayah, who has a little bit more survivability, obviously having that feather storm. But
Yeah.
I think that that might not be enough, and I wouldn't expect. I'm sorry, I would expect a cleanse to come through for both bot laners.
And when we're talking about the fact that these two teams need to play around pacing of the game and they need to be able to focus on when their team comp is strong and really utilize that to be able to win out in this game because the two team comps are so similar and so close in just the way that they'll interact at every stage of the game. I think it's really important to look towards what lanes are going to be the emphasis. You were talking about top lane. If Renekton's able to pop off, then he could definitely have a humongous impact on this game, but I also think that a lot of the focus is towards that bottom side with both ADCs
Hmm.
being hyper carry champions. They can absolutely take over if they do get ahead. And that's not even to mention looking towards the middle lane where Swain will be looking for roams with the J4. You'll also see Ari moving quite often with this Ivern. I'm so dizzy with where these lanes are going to be focused. I don't even know what to look for. Where do you think that these two teams will be focusing on in this game?
I mean, as it pertains to A5, I definitely think I agree with you. They definitely need to focus on that bot lane, maybe a little bit on the mid lane as well, because if Zaya's, behind, they don't have a lot of damage. And overall, it really is going to be on the utility of, the top and the jungle and the support to really keep this Zaya alive. And if they can manage to do that, if they can sort of manage to protect the puppy, if you will, then I definitely think A5 can come out on top here. As I was saying, Prince is really the player that they want to play around, and this comp shows this. The playstyle that they have, drafted for definitely shows who they want to play for. They want to get this Xayah ahead, but if this Xayah doesn't get ahead, if it even falls behind, the late game can definitely be a pain for A5 to have to play around.
Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare if you're even looking at the other side, right? If you're looking at Arctic Ace and what they
Yep.
have, the composition they have on their side, if Ari doesn't get ahead as well, right? Because if you don't have any AP damage coming out from the side of A5 and Xayah is hitting like, I can't think of the analogy at the moment, but if she's not hitting very hard, then you're in a position where none of the champions on the right side of my screen will ever die, besides maybe
Yeah.
Zeri, but she gets
Absolutely.
super tanky later on. So it's just an absolute nightmare if we don't get ahead or get the correct players ahead on the side of A5 for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think at the end of the day, it is going to come down to execution. And so while we wait for the teams to execute their drafts, we are going to take a short little spectator delay. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more A5 versus Arctic Ace. See you around. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to week one of the Risen Esports Fall 2023 split. The match today is Arctic Ace versus the Ascendant 5, and we are underway here in the game as both teams have similar postures here. No one looking to do anything too fancy. You can see that Sir Raven did place the ward in the tribush, maybe anticipating a potential topside invade, and junglers trading blows here, flags, and whatever Ivern throws out, because I have no idea what that even is.
I'm not going to say that I do either, but I'm definitely excited to be back onto the Rift for fall week 1 of Dominate season here in Risen. And yeah, Quacks, I'm super excited as we look at, like you said, 2 5-point iterations going on either side. Neither team really wanting to flex their muscles that much. I mean, Ivern sometimes is a champion that will look for that invade early to be able to steal a buff, but he won't be able to find one here with that J4 and Renekton being in that top side at the moment. So as we look towards the beginning of this game and a little bit of a cheese in this bot side, do you see any runes or summoners that you think are a little bit less of what you expected? You were talking about Zeri maybe going Ghost over the cleanse.
Yeah, I definitely think that this puts Crystal Fang on the Zeri in a little bit of a precarious situation toward that late game, or, you know, especially actually toward that early game. I meant to say against a champion like Nautilus, who is really good at locking you down. And you can see the Keystone rune choice from the Nautilus does entail that they are willing to go, you know, sort of all in, go more aggressive. So definitely expecting some action here in the bot lane, and that is exactly what sort of the blue team want. Again, they want to get Prince ahead. They want to make sure he's, you know, the carry of this game, because that's what they're used to sort of playing, as a little bit of trading here in the top side.
Yeah, not too much though, and it looks like Drex is actually going to be moving maybe towards this mid lane. I'm not sure he's going to be able to make anything happen. 744 cool playing very cool in this mid lane, posturing towards her Ivern. And yeah, it looks like Drex will just have to make a slight appearance in the lane and walk towards that bottom side. Honestly, really low, having cleared only 2 camps. And Ivern a little bit ahead at this point, I would say, because of the time that Mr. Drex spent towards that mid lane that wasn't particularly fruitful.
Yeah, and it looks like Imaginary Champ on this Ivern is going to be making his way back up to his topside camps. And really from here, it is, you know, a wonder on where he wants to go from here. You can see that the top lane is pushed up, so there is potential for a gank here in the bot lane. Or does he really just want to wait to, I'm sorry, in the top lane, or does he really just want to wait to go back bot? It looks like that's exactly what he's going to be doing. He's going to leave Astro Hailstorm on sort of an island here as a gank coming in potentially.
Yeah, really good timer for Mr. Drex to be down here and interrupt for the Nautilus. Does mean that he's taken very low. The Ignite is ticking, but it will not find the kill unless... Oh, it actually is a kill for Crystal Fang. He does end up dying for it, but First Blood will go over to the ADC of Arctic Ace.
Yeah, a 1-for-1 on the ADCs here, and really good, you know, from Crystal Fang there to go in and flash. It was a little bit interesting, but I do think that the wave is in a state where he's not going to lose a ton, as we can see potentially something here in the jungle, but nothing is going to be had as Imaginary Champ. Just going to walk on, sort of strut on by on the Ivern. He always seems so relaxed when he walks, you know, like nothing can possibly harm him. Nothing can make him in a bad mood. Sort of a lore accurate Ivern.
Yeah, 100%. Ivern is one of those champions that makes you feel very calm when you're playing him. So as we look towards this bottom side, though, Prince is not very calm. Mr. Drex is actually gonna just die. What? Ignite will be ticking. It does end up actually taking him down nearly. Oh my gosh, the shield isn't up.
Shield!
He's able to walk away. Mr. Drex gets away, but the Ivern in this top side, it does look like it's going to be a fruitful gank for the side of A5 as... Oh, the flash forward from Sir Raven. He does nearly find enough damage, but it won't be enough. And the auto attacks from the Ivern should be enough to finish off the Crocodile in this top side.
Yeah, and A5 managed to find Sir Raven at the very last second there. He could have potentially gone for a heal. I'm pretty sure his Fury was enough for that. But yeah, now this is a Renekton without a flash, so a lot of that sort of engage potential on trades in the top lane is lost. And this is going to be a very important summoner as the game sort of goes on. Renekton has a really tough time at continuing those, you know, late game engages without that flash available to be able to surprise someone with a potential W. So yeah, it's definitely an important summoner for Renekton, and not having it, not going to be the end of the world, but with Astro Hailstorm still having it, he definitely has to play back here.
Yeah, and Ivern's now kill up, does have those Ionian Boots of Lucidity, as well as a Dark Seal, and, oh, he's buying and selling. It looks like it's not going to be the refillable potion just yet, but after corresponding with Boris, he is quite ahead, honestly, of this J4. And even towards the top side, we were talking about summoners. This Cassante didn't even have to burn Flash in that exchange. He was very low, but managed to walk his way out of that one without burning it. So ahead in the top side. But level 6 and level 5, it does look like So Raven's just going to kill him, no? The Q3 does come through.
Available.
Yeah, he's actually out. Wow. And that is the summoner difference that we were talking about. I'm not sure how close. Oh, we look towards the bot side and a free dragon going over towards the side of AA. And I mean, that's to be expected, to be fair. J4 does have a lot more priority in the early game. We were talking about how Zeri and Maokai were shoving so hard into Prince and Dank Candle. So it is pretty much what we would have expected, but it's kind of sad that it's only a Cloud Dragon.
Yeah, for sure. Sir Raven is not done with his pursuit yet. He might be looking to maybe get something off on here, but ultimate for Cassante is, now available. He might have to back off after this.
The Q3? If it connects? Ooh, good dodge. Textbook, honestly. Oh, wait. Hailstorm? You're really low! Okay, so, yeah.
I really don't know what Astro was thinking there. Now, this is really bad for the Cassante. The wave is pushing into your tower. You don't have TP. You don't have Flash. So, going to miss a lot of vital resources there as... Ooh, might be going in for the bot lane.
Yeah, really good flash over by Prince, and the Nautilus is caught on the wrong side of this one. Dank Candle is going to be dank into the ground as J4 does end up picking up that one, and Drex finally gets a kill under his belt.
And a little bit of unfortunate anti-synergy there as the Maokai Q did knock him out of the flag and drag range. So that is a little bit unfortunate for Mr. Drex not being able to land that, sabotaged by his teammate. Happens all the time as a jungler main. I can attest to this just constantly happening to any champion that has displacement. But yeah, just another kill over here for Arctic Ace, and they're going to continue to try and, hammer home at the spot lane. Make sure that Prince is in an uncomfortable position and try and, get him. But so far, all they're getting is the support.
And I was honestly a little worried that Arctic Ace were playing a little bit too hyphy. I mean, we were talking about it being their first time here in Risen, so maybe a little bit too full of themselves, playing a little bit cocky. But even after burning those flashes in the early game, they're now a kill up, nearly 1,000 gold up as well, as there is a little bit of scuffle in this river. For a good time is not having a good time right now, but the Swain is ulting
Astro's
in
on
the middle
the
of 3 members of A5. Can they actually make it work out? Dank Candle has to flash away, and the members of A5 are surrounding Astro Hailstorm, but a good CC onto Mr. Drex does find him very low, and there will not be any follow-up damage. Swain ends up taking down Nautilus. Zeri picks up a kill onto Cassante, and it's another 2 kills going the side of AA. The flash forward will not be enough, but once more, AA comes out on top.
Yeah, I mean, AA doing actually a really interesting move there, going for the lane swap. So Raven on the bot lane now, you can see, just collecting plates on his own, and
1 to 100?
Oh god, 1 to 100. Oh no,
yeah,
sir.
It was actually, it was 100 to 1 there, and then to 0. He just died in his own mid lane.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate there for 1 to 100, getting maybe potentially a little too greedy onto Simon44 Cool, but nonetheless, AA managed to pick themselves up a Herald, and yeah, I really like how Mr. Drex is applying this pressure all around the map. This is something you love to see from Jarvans. They want to get on the map early, they want to make an impact and influence their lanes, and so far that's what this jungler is doing, and he's doing it very well.
Extremely well, in fact, and now 2,000 gold is the lead for the side of Arctic Ace. A5 really showing that there is something to be said about being an established team, but sometimes you just need a little bit of a warm-up. It is their first game of fall as well, so maybe just coming into their own a little bit, figuring out what their identity is for this season. And I mean, it does look like they still have things under control, but definitely quite behind in the gold department.
Yeah, an Imaginary Champ hasn't recalled in quite some time, so going to pick up a few things for himself. I mean, you could see the inventory of Imaginary Champ versus Mr. Drex, basically all full versus like 3 things. So yeah, Mr. Drex definitely, I would say, has, had more impact in this early game, and I definitely think that's going to matter here as they have the Herald available, and the bot tower is incredibly low with the dragon spawning, so Arctic Assault already setting up for the second dragon, setting up to continue dominating this early to mid game, and yeah, that'll just be first Herald going over to Arctic Ace.
Really good of them to be able to take down that first turret, and a lot of a skirfuffle in this bot side. Mr. Drex is looking for any CC he can. Astro Hailstorm is here in the area, and it looks like for a good time will not be having a good time this time. And as Zeri does have ultimate, I don't think the Astro Hailstorm will be able to follow any further. she is zooming quite around. But I mean, one more
Yeah.
kill taken back by A5, and once again we were talking about them being established, and a lot of that does come with being comfortable in these positions where you're falling behind in the early game and you're still able to get things back.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like For a Good Time was just a little too far up there. His team not able to quite follow up with the engage, but I don't really think this is going to dissuade them or put them off on a timer to rush to this dragon. You can see Mr. Drex is already on this Hextech dragon, and there is no contest here from A5 as you can see Imaginary Champ making his way up to the top side. So Raven does have Flash available, so I honestly don't think he's under really any threat here as he is backing away. So yeah, it looks like AA just taking dragons, and there is no contest here from A5 as they're just sort of scrounging and scavenging here for advantages to try and get some gold back.
And I think that it's not only that, but also the reality of you have to accept your team's identity and what you did in the draft. And the reality is they picked Ivern, Ahri, Xayah, these champions that do a lot better after the early game, especially when you're looking at stuff
Yeah.
like the Swain J4. As scratch that, we're fighting a Maokai in the jungle. The tree is not safe where he belongs, and it looks like he's going to be falling in his own jungle. Oh, okay. The queue goes a little bit wide. Simon pretty... All right. He did end up picking up that kill finally, but... yeah, as I was saying, it is just a reality of your team comp isn't able to contest those early dragons, and I think it's really comfortable to say that you need to play safe in that early game rather than contest these dragons that you know you shouldn't have even gotten if everybody was playing correctly.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, the identity of A5 is that they do want to get this Ahri and they want to get this Xayah ahead. So they definitely are playing to it in that regard. You can see that Imaginary Champ has officially finished up that Shirelia's battle song. So a lot more engage potential coming out there for A5 as the game will continue to progress. But you can see that Crystal Fang and For a Good Time are still here in this top lane, just trying to get any kind of plates they can. We talked about how important it was to make sure that the ADCs were juiced, but I really think that A5 have made a correct call here, just trying to get so many plays for this Zeri.
Okay, Nautilus Ult comes out, so Raven is left in the middle of 3 members of A5. I don't think he can get out of this one. It is a bouncy castle in the bot lane. The Crocodile has nowhere to go, and will they give the kill over to the Ahri? No, it does. Actually, does end up going over to the Ahri, and the kill on the opposite side for the Zeri in the top side. Top for top.
Yeah, for sure. They managed to get Astro Hailstorm, off camera. We love to see an off-camera death, as they did manage to also get the turret. So just more gold going into the Zeri at some point. But Prince is a little bit ahead in XP, has completed that Cole, so will get a little bit more gold for himself as well. So yeah, I think this really is going to come down to sort of which ADC is able to be peeled better by the team. And overall, I think A5 have the advantage when it comes to sort of protecting Prince. You know, they have things like the Cassante in case anyone gets too close. There is that all out. They have the shields from the Ivern, and they have so much CC from Dank Candle on this Nautilus. So there is a lot of protection here for Prince. And if he manages to continue going deathless in this game, I could definitely see this third dragon potentially being contested by A5, maybe even this second Herald, depending on how they want to play it. As you can see, both top laners do have TP available, so there is potential for a fight on both sides. And I really think that this game, despite it being in gold advantage for Arctic Ace, is still kind of on a razor's edge for both teams.
It 100% is, and at least the kills are trying to show us that that's the case in some way, shape, or form. But I definitely think that obviously the facilitation of these hyper carries is going to be super important. And when we're looking at that, you can also look at ease of execution between these champions. I think it's super easy to peel your ADC if you're playing stuff like Ivern, like the Cassante, like the Nautilus, versus playing stuff like Renekton and J4, where you have to be a little bit more creative in those team fights, as we do look at Sir Raven and Astro Hailstorm fighting a little bit in the spot side. But as we know, most top lane fights do just end in both of them walking away, and that's exactly what we just saw.
Yeah, as you can see, the Herald has made its way up, and you can see both teams are trying to make something happen. You can see that 1-100 is going to come from that top lane here as Raven.
Maybe took one too many turret shots, does end up finding the Dominus, but will he be able to find enough HP? It looks like he found some. The Q3 doesn't quite land, and once again, they're just going to walk away from each other. But at least Sir Raven is earning posturing towards that top side for his team.
Yeah, while we were looking at the top lane fight, it was Mr. Drex and the Arctic Ace squad who managed to get themselves the second Herald. So a lot of pressure is going to be created as this third dragon is about a minute away from spawning, a little less than that. So yeah, it feels like A5 are going to be forced to, answer this Herald. There isn't really a tower that is low enough to be taken instantly by the Herald. So
Mm.
obviously you have that, but at the same time, a Herald's a Herald. You have to answer it at some point, or it's just going to continue charging and continue being a threat in the lane. So that definitely buys Arctic Ace a little bit of wiggle room when it comes to preparing for this fight. As it looks like both teams are going to make their way to this bot side river. It is A5 who made it there first.
And it will be Mountain Soul, so very good if the side of Arctic Ace are able to pick that up. We were talking about them being a little bit hard to kill just looking at the champions in general, but not only the champions, if Mountain Soul goes over to their side as well, it would definitely be very oppressive. And it looks like they are trying to enter the river, but once again, for a good time is found in the river. Oh, Swain on the opposite side, the Cataclysm comes out, but it only catches one. Xayah has to flash over. Prince really didn't want to, and it looks like Swain in the middle of three members will find tons of damage, and the ADC from A5 falls. Swain will fall shortly after, and there's just death and carnage all around my screen. Simon44 Cool is on the run, and there won't be much more follow-up coming out from Mr. Drex, I have to assume, but the flash is available. No, there won't be any more, but it is 4 members of A5 dead on my screen.
Yeah, and Arctic Ace there, we were talking about A5's, lack of damage without Prince and without Simon44 Cool being super duper ahead, and it was, put on full display in that fight as they were not able to kill 1-100 or Mr. Drex in time for Sir Raven to come down and just be the enormous crocodile of death and carnage, like you said, and that is going to be a third dragon going over to Arctic Ace. It feels like A5, they have the right idea. They were in the river first, and they had vision all around. Hell, Sir Raven wasn't even a part of that fight for the first, few seconds, but they just didn't have enough resources, enough damage to kill the super tanky frontline of Arctic Ace.
And that was the problem, right? It all started with this Maokai and him face checking, tanking 3 CC abilities, and then all of a sudden you don't have a way to deal with Swain who's in the middle of 5 members, and it just went to absolute tomfoolery is one way that I can put it. But 3 dragons under their belt is definitely going to be very impactful moving towards that Mountain Soul potential. So much pressure on the map. We were talking about the Rift Herald also being available. I believe they used it towards the middle lane.
Yeah, they took the mid tower.
Yeah, they took the mid turret, so they opened up the map in general, and they're just gonna have so much more pressure as the game moves on towards the 20-minute mark. And we were talking about these teams being in a position where both of them will have to just outplay in these team fights. Even towards the mid stages, either team can win if they play better. So I think it's really gonna come down to posturing, vision control, and the way that these two teams played out as we see a TP. For a good time is caught once more in the middle of 3 members of A5, and will he finally go down this time? He does indeed. It did take literally all 5 members, but they finally managed to get him, and the tree is dead, but what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, and you can see Sir Raven is on this bot side, just sort of pushing away on this Renekton. Doesn't have TP available, but yeah, TP expelled there from Simon44 Cool. This is actually fine because there isn't an objective spawning anytime soon, as 1-100 pops the ult.
Yeah, and
I
a
don't
really
know if
good
they want
engage from
this.
Mr. Drex. I mean, they pop Xayah ult. That's really big, right? And 1 minute and 20 seconds until Baron. Okay, well, never mind. We're still fighting. The Cataclysm comes out. Dank Candle gets deleted. And it looks like the Ahri gets deleted as well. 2 members of A5 dead. And the Baron spawning in 1 minute's time. So much pressure coming out on the bottom side as well. And Arctic Ace is absolutely taking over.
Yeah, there is just no way for any of them to tank the damage that Arctic Ace have been putting on display in these past few minutes. Without the Cassante there to tank anything, they just all fall down. The damage from the Zeri, from 1-100, from Mr. Drex is so insanely high here in this game, and it feels like it's only going to get worse. This Jarvan doesn't even have Shojin yet, and he's going to be making his way toward that as well. And 1-100 doesn't even have 2 items. So it's going, it just feels like it's going to get worse here for the Ascendant 5 if they're not able to shut down or get any kind of, pick or advantage in this next, next few minutes. Then it's looking pretty dire for them here in game 1.
Yeah, they definitely are starting to hemorrhage, and that's just a result of the fact that we said J4, Renekton, Swain, these champions absolutely capitalize on the fact that they get ahead early, and they squeeze you to death. So we're in a position where Mr. Drex is still looking now in the middle of 3 members of A5, and they have to just be on the back foot. They have to run, and it's just a display of how much pressure they actually have. Mr. Drex catches 2 in the Cataclysm, but he gets
Ooh.
taken over the wall. So Raven over the wall is trying to support his jungler as much as possible, and in the crossfire, the Nautilus
Raven!
falls. Nobody was even targeting him, but he fell anyways. Maokai in the middle of the turret. Will he be able to find anything further? No, For a Good Time is not having a good time once more, and a little bit too hyphy coming out from the bottom, from the support of Arctic Ace.
Yeah, Mr. Drex had the right idea there to continue going in, but the all-out just completely foiled his plan.
Fire?
We are not done!
Crystal Fang? Just
Champ?
bleeded.
Imaginary champ? It was just in our imagination, like the name suggests. It was just all in our mind, and we didn't see the Ivern run into 4 there. As yeah, just continuing to find advantages. Arctic Ace are just on top of this game. It feels like the Baron is up and available, so I have to think that Arctic Ace are thinking about sort of setting up vision around there. You can see there are a couple of wards in that area, but all it really takes is one pick for them to just go and beeline it to the Baron, and this dragon is also spawning. I can't see Ascendant 5 potentially threatening a objective trade, but I just, again, going back to that damage, I don't think Ascendant 5 have enough damage to take the dragons or the Baron, whatever objective they choose to take, in time for AA to potentially respond to. They don't even need all 5 members. They could very well just set one member on this dragon while the rest, sort of contest A5 at the Baron. It's looking really hard for them at this point. They need to find an objective, an advantage in some way, but there's just nothing left. Prince is not, fed enough to carry this game. Simon 44 Cool just gets deleted as
Yeah, it does look like there's a fight in the river. For a Good Time is finally finding himself a good time, as Imaginary Champ does get sent back to the Imagination Realm, and it looks like the Xante is sure to follow. Dank Candle is next on the chopping block from Mr. Drex. He does find the Flag and Drag as well as the Cataclysm onto Simon 44 Cool, has to burn the Spirit Rush away, and 2 members are all that's left standing for A5.
Yeah, and this is the worst time to lose your jungler if you are A5 Baron and the Soul are up. And I have to imagine that Arctic Ace are just going to go for both here. They don't really have any reason not to, as yeah, they're just going to cross the mid lane, clear the wave. They have acquired the Mountain Soul. And after this, I have to think that they're going to try and acquire the end.
And I mean, it's so unfortunate is the only word that I can think of when we're talking about the game plan that A5 had to go into this game with, and what they needed to do. If we're looking at, oh, okay, there's a Crocodile in the mid lane. Prince, can you win the 1v1? He is kiting quite well. The Dominus comes out, but it is not enough for now. The CC is enough. Prince finally finds the space, but it won't be enough to take, to save himself. The Crocodile is too strong, finds the kill onto the ADC. ADC's in 2023 Keck W. And I was just going to say that this is the reality, right? Before that death, 4-1 Xayah, 3-1 Ahri. We were talking about they needed to get fed to be able to do damage, to be able to make an impact in this game, and it just doesn't matter.
Yup. Exactly. It really just doesn't seem like it matters at that point. But Sir Raven, he didn't even have to auto him. He just, Prince just died to the aura from the Dominus that got popped. So that should speak, sort of, that kind of is an allegory for how this game is currently going. As, yeah, now I really want to start to see Arctic Ace sort of, dividing their forces in each lane. You can see, potential pick. He doesn't even get to play the game.
Yeah, potential is one way to put it. Guaranteed is another. Imaginary Champ is once again sent to the Death Realm, and it looks like it's just a matter of picking up coins at this point for the side of AA, as they literally just walk up and they get free kills. I don't know. And here they are, knocking on the base of A5 in game 1 of their first series in the fall season. But it looks like Prince has to walk away. Dank Candle is left kind of just mingling with the enemy team. He does end up falling finally after his 2 teammates were killed around him, and I do believe that this will be game 1 going over to the side of AA, and a very powerful performance for their first time in the Risen Dominate fall season.
Yeah, 9-23 in kills. They're up around 14k gold as they're just playing with their food at this point. Managed to pick up one last kill before ending the game, and game 1 goes to the Arctic Ace. A strong performance from this team to start out this series.
Yeah, absolute epitome of dominate. We were talking about them being in Risen Dominate for their first time ever. They definitely dominated on our screens in this game, and I'm excited to see what they have to bring in the next game. Obviously, we're going to see draft developments. We were talking about even just the fact that Mr. Drex was a substitute jungler for their team. How strong can this team be if they have another jungler that they're more comfortable with? I mean, this was an absolutely insane performance coming out from them. I've been seeing some chat jibber jabber where they're talking about they're called Ascendant because they ascend after absolutely throwing game one. We'll see, we'll see what happens. But that was game one of this best of three series, so there's a lot more action to come, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think eyes really have to be sort of on Mr. Drex and how the junglers want to play this match, right? You know, you really need to take advantage of that Jarvan. Leaving it up felt like a major oversight from the Ascent 5. It's such a strong pick to apply so much early pressure, and we saw that early pressure in full display in that game with the Jarvan just constantly coming bot, setting up a tent, not giving Prince any room to breathe, and that was the main point that the Ascended 5 wanted to play around, and it just got shut down from draft, it felt like.
Yeah, and it wasn't even only draft, right? It was also when it came to playing the map correctly, when it came to macro decisions coming out from the side of AA,
Absolutely.
they were absolutely running everything. And that's a result of obviously the pacing that they set for themselves. They knew when they picked J4, when they picked Renekton, when they picked stuff like the Maokai and Swain, they're able to facilitate those two champions that we're going to play the map how we want to. We're going to push the pressure of this game, and we're going to take turrets, we're going to take objectives, and we're not going to let you breathe. And if we let you breathe, then okay, we might have thrown. But if they play it like they played it on our screens, I mean, it's absolutely textbook perfect.
Yeah, for sure. Textbook perfect is basically the phrase that I would use to describe the game as well. They were always there for objectives. They were always ready to fight. They always felt like they had a resource up on the Ascended 5. And overall, it was their game from start to finish. And if they can continue this in the series, this is going to be an incredibly quick 2-0. And Drake, you are going to be the correct predictor of the day, and I am not.
And then I'll be back to the bench. So let's hope that that doesn't happen. Let's hope we get to game three. I want to see some crazy stuff. I want to see some action
Mhm.
on my screen for the first season. Sorry, for the first series of the fall season here in Risen. But that's going to be it for now, guys. I believe we're going to go to a short break, and then we'll be sorting out the draft as well as the beginnings of game two.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the series between the Ascendant 5 and Arctic Ace. In the game one, we saw an absolutely dominating performance from Arctic Ace as they managed to transition their early pressure into an absolute masterclass of teamwork and take that first game of our best of three series here in the week one of our fall 2023. I almost said Aegis Risen Esports split. As we hop into draft here, haven't been able to detect too many differences. It looks like the sides are going to be the same, with A5 banning away that Elise, banning away that Seraphine, and AA sticking with the comfort as well, banning away the Vigar and Graves.
Yeah, I think obviously sticking with that stuff for now is where they need to be aiming. I mean, they don't need to change up everything too much, right? A5 obviously got quite crushed when we look at the grand scheme of things, when we look at like how the game looked at the end, but we definitely saw definite glimmers of hope, as we already see J4 being one iteration that's changed. I think that's a really good read. J4 absolutely just dominated them in the last game, and I think that was a large reason as to why Arctic Ace had such an easy time taking over on the map. And I think A5 having that on their side this time will change things quite a bit. Wukong in response is definitely an interesting one. I can't say that I know too much about Wukong currently, but like currently in the meta, but I know that he's obviously been a very strong champion into J4 in the past. And so a
Hmm.
decent response coming out from Arctic Ace, and the Braum to go with that. That's definitely a really preemptive Braum in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like the Braum is a little bit early, and I feel like you want to pick it with an ADC that would be good with the Braum. That way it can't be taken away. You can see the A5 aiming for the Kai'Sa, but yeah, I would expect AA to pick something that really goes well with the Braum, being able to get those constant passive procs off. But yeah, A5 changing it up quite a bit, being able to get themselves the Jarvan, and AA going to respond with the Wukong. Wukong, not as much in the jungle meta as he quite used to be. He did get hit with a couple of nerfs quite a few patches ago, but this is still a very textbook, response to the Jarvan 4 pick. Obviously, he's able to have that armor shred with the Q, and Jarvan loves stacking the armor just as a champion in general. You can cancel out the flag and drag with your Cyclone if you're also able to time it right, and being trapped in a Cyclone and Cataclysm is actually bad for the Jarvan 4. Usually it's a you're trapped in here with me, but Wukong says no, you're trapped in here with me whenever he pops the Cyclone, and just being able to get right next to the Jarvan is exactly what the Wukong wants, as we do see an Alistar lock in for A5 and AA. I got to know what's going to go with this Brahmin. It looks like it is actually going to be the Samira here. Was not expecting that champion to be picked, but
What the?
Arctic Ace coming out guns blazing quite literally here by locking that in.
I mean, Quacks, I'm gonna be honest, I smelled something, right? Like I caught a
Hmm.
whiff walking by the door, but that is not what I expected to be cooking in this game too. This is definitely some interesting stuff coming out from the side of Arctic Ace. Picking up that Samira was not what I was expecting whatsoever, and I was already gonna mention disconnect in these fights. Wukong, one of those champions that really just throws a wrench in things. We were talking about J4. Um, Pulling a Cataclysm onto the Wukong, and then Wukong's in a situation where he can actually just W over the wall and Cyclone onto the backline because J4 is no longer in his backline, right? He's in the
Yeah.
Cataclysm. So it definitely causes a little bit of a disconnect in team fights there. But on top of that, you have a Braum diving in, you have a Samira just absolutely popping off in the middle of the team fight as well. It's definitely gonna, the makings of a very interesting game. And sorry, I did ramble on there a bit, but we're already looking at the the bans in tier in phase two as well. So Giuseppe getting banned away the Gangplank, I think, was very smart. Both top laners very proficient on this champion, and I'm surprised it wasn't picked up in game one. But the Swain, also a good ban. I think AA definitely found a lot of uh, comfort on that. But the Yone is what's left up, and it looks like that's what's going to get locked in for the mid laner of AA.
Yeah, AA definitely playing for comfort here, but I have to wonder, what is their magic damage threat going to be? You're playing into Alistar, Jarvan, and potentially now a Poppy, as A5 are hovering over that pick, and you don't have any magic damage on your hands. Sure, you have a decent amount of armor shred, and yes, Yone's passive does do a little bit of magic damage. He does about half and half with those autos, but I feel like that's definitely not going to be enough, as yeah, A5 going to lock that Poppy in. Is the flex pick is lost here now that we do have the Alistar and the Jarvan ready for this for their roles. So Poppy does have the potential to go top lane, jungle, and support. So there are a lot of different iterations, but looks like it is just going to be locked into that top lane, as Yeah, I gotta wonder what AA are going to respond here with in the top lane.
No
There is
way,
potential.
bro.
uh,
There's no way.
Yasuo. I like this. There are a lot of knockups from A5 in a lot of different ways to get that ultimate off for Yasuo. So I would imagine that is also probably going to be an AP Kai'Sa then, in which case I think the Samira value is greatly increased because she's able to block those Ws with her own. And yeah, it looks like AA are going to lock in the Aurelion Sol. So this is actually a Yone top lane, not a Yone mid.
I guess eating galaxies does give you galaxy brain because we were definitely confused about the draft and we thought that the Yone might be going mid, but it's not going to be the brothers facing off. It will be the Acel in the mid lane. I have to assume, right? Putting my hands up, you never know, especially in in
Hmm.
tournaments like these. You can definitely be confused, and Acel could go towards that top side. But I assume, especially with 1/100 being rather proficient on the champion in past seasons, that he's going to be picking that up and taking it in the mid lane. So a little bit of a volatile top side for what looks like should be a rather comfortable mid lane for both mid laners.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the mid lane, and there, I don't expect there to be a lot going on, at least in terms of Arctic Ace. You know, they're the ones who did win the game, so I think that in order to secure this game, you really have to play for that Samira. You have to play for this Yone, and you can definitely see a lot more style coming in for this team in the game one. They're probably more comfortable being able to pick, sort of these more personalized champions that aren't necessarily as in tune with the meta as their game one draft. You know, they said we won game one, we have a little bit of wiggle room to try what we want to play. And I definitely think that this is Arctic Ace playing their comfort through and through. And it does work, but I am, again, a little bit worried about that magic damage. This Aurelion Sol is not going to have the easiest lane in the world against a champion like Yasuo, who is just going to probably want to constantly bully him. But if this Aurelion Sol can actually manage to, get to that late game, then can definitely see this being a very high damage comp that Arctic Ace have drafted for themselves.
Yeah, and alternatively, you look at the opposite side, right, and you see Kaisa as the only magic damage possibility, right, for the side of
Hmm.
A5. So you see the
Yeah.
same issue going both ways. Obviously, more tanky champions on the left side of our screens, but it definitely the reality of both teams could struggle with that if it gets to the stage of the game where that matters, right, where people are building up these resistances. As we look at game two, we look at how these teams have developed. Do you think that it is going to be a little bit of a different story, or do you feel like AA have drafted well enough that they're going to just write the story here and make it a 2-0 quick?
The early pressure that we saw from game one is needed here more now than ever. And without the access to the Jarvan, I don't think it's as easy to get that early pressure off as Wukong. Obviously, doesn't have as much agency in the bot lane, isn't able to, have the same impact in those early ganks. The flag and drag being one of the best tools in the game, and Wukong doesn't really have an equivalent to that. So I feel like the early game is just, that much more important for Arctic Ace in order to get into a 2-0.
Mm.
But A5, yeah, if they can manage to get this Kaisa ahead, if they can play for it like they tried to play for it in, game one, getting Prince ahead is primarily their objective. And you can see that Yasuo is also, wanting to get ahead in this game as well. If they can manage to do what they wanted to do in game one, I can definitely see this going their way as well. But I really think it all comes down to how much pressure is exerted in that early game. How can they transition that pressure into objectives, and how can the late game shape up for both of these teams, and how can they play the map around with it?
And I definitely think when you're touching on that, right, we're looking at the two teams. We're looking at the 10 champions spread across our beautiful graphic on our screens, right? On the right side, it does look like it's so much harder to activate yourselves on the map with stuff like the
Yeah.
Wukong, with stuff like the Asol in the early stages, right? Because Wukong, like you said, has no CC ability in that early game. Asol wants to just sit back and farm his Stardust and wait till level 9 minimum, right, before he starts doing
Yep.
anything on the map. And it's a very different draft from what we saw in game one for AA. So it's definitely a warning sign, I think, for me at least, when we're looking at these two teams and how the identities have swapped entirely between game one and game two. And obviously, we'll have to see whether AA is just proficient at both or if it's a reality where A5 are just going to absolutely take over because they got that Jarvan pick in pick one.
On a quick little unrelated side note before we go into the break, I could definitely see Prince getting really annoyed on this Kai'Sa. You're gonna have to deal if this is an AP Kai'Sa. Your main objective is to fire out those missiles and just make sure that you hit as many of those as possible. You're gonna have to deal with Samira Wind Wall. You're gonna have to deal with Wukong Clone. You're gonna have to deal with Braum Unbreakable. So the damage and if the reaction time of AA is good enough to either deflect or just outright dodge those prey seekers, I can see Prince getting real annoyed toward that late game, just trying to snipe out the team and sort of soften them up, potentially before a fight or an objective.
Yeah, and I can see that going both ways for sure. We're looking at the champions on the side of AA who are trying to do damage, right? And besides, I guess, the Asol. And you're looking at Wukong, you're looking at Yone, you're looking at Samira. These three champions are pretty much melee range, and they're trying to fight into Yasuo, who's super squirmy, right? This champion just worms his way out of every situation. You have a J4 who can just flag and drag through your whole team. You have a Alistar that is just the most annoying champ to be melee range in. Against ever, right? So you have all of these realities that you have to play against for both teams, and it's just going to be fun to see how these two teams play around that annoyance and whether that actually ends up impacting their play. We hope not, right? Because we hope that they're at the echelon where that's not going to be a factor. But as we do go to a short break, Quacks, I'm super excited. I hope everybody in chat is excited. Guys, make your predictions, put them into the Twitch chat right now, and we'll go to a short break before we get back onto the Rift with Game 2.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Game 2 between the Ascendant 5 and Arctic Ace. We saw AA manage to take themselves to the second game by picking up a win in the first, and already we can see the Ascendant 5 trying to maybe get an early leg up here on the game as they are stacked in the bush. Might be trying to invade, might just be trying to scout for an invade from Arctic Ace, but yeah, this is not the usual 5-point defense. And it looks like AA haven't taken advantage of anything. You know, they're about to spot
Oh,
them out here as Crystal Fang is going to see them.
yeah, really good reaction from him just to be able to walk away. I mean, obviously you see it more in solo queue than you do in 5v5 situations. Somebody being AFK and not reacting to that situation, but no dash abilities up for any of the champions at the moment does mean that the Spear is able to get his way out of that one. But Quacks, how excited are we for game 2? Do we see any runes? Do we see any summoners that we're we're particularly keen on talking about. I see Halo Blades on Kaisa, but that's pretty standard. I mean, there's no cleanse, I guess. We talk about exhaust minus 0.83 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that there isn't a lot of, diversion from what is, standard in the meta. I will say that Sir Raven did opt to take that Conquer instead of Lethal Tempo. And same goes for Crystal Fang. I have seen a few Samiras go for Lethal Tempo, but yeah, Conquer is also pretty stock standard for the champion. So it looks like both teams just sort of, sticking to what they know to do, how they know how to play the champions. And I was expecting a little bit of deviation in runes from Arctic Ace, given that, again, we feel like this draft is much more personalized and catered to their preferences. And maybe they would have something up their sleeve, but it looks like, yeah, both teams just going to have a pretty standard early game as engage on the bot lane.
Yeah, level 2 is super oppressive in this lane with Braum and Samira. The flash away does have to come out from the Dank Candle. And Crystal Fang will probably just have to back away from that one, starting to heal up with those potions. I assume they'll be full health next time we look towards that bot lane. But specifically looking at the junglers and the pathing, I think it's really interesting to know. Obviously, J4 is a champion that wants to get on the map early, so you already see him moving towards that top lane, 3 camping into maybe a top lane gank, trying to get this Poppy ahead. It's definitely a strange iteration on what I would have expected the focus to be for this J4 in this game.
I mean, there is a lot of setup here as Astraham is level 3.
Oh, really good W coming out from Poppy. The interruption. So Raven has no way to get out of this one. I would have to assume he pops the E. He definitely has no way out. Will he actually be able to find the third? The J4, it's not quite enough. And it looks like the imaginary champ will be fully real for the moment. But Sir Raven will be sent to the dirt. And 1 kill going over to the side of A5. Flipping the script from game 1.
Imaginary Champ holding his flash there takes some guts. As a jungler myself, I would have 100% flashed there out of fear from the Yone, but Imaginary Champ actually does not commit the flash to try and get away from the Yone. Very, 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 bold of him to do that. Obviously doesn't go down, so it's very worth. There's no flash available for this Yone, but you can see Mr. Dex might be looking for something in the bot lane.
Yeah, he opts out of it because it was just a hard lane to gank, but it looks like Astral Hailstorm and Sir Raven are scruffling in this top side for now. But yeah, I mean, fights going on around the map. Sir Raven flexing his muscles a little bit in this top side, even after he just died, right? But a TP up for this Poppy in this lane, already being a little bit ahead in CS once this, actually not quite ahead in CS once this wave crashes, but definitely up in XP. Astro Hailstorm definitely in a really commanding position at the moment because of the fact that Poppy also just kind of wins the lane, I would have to argue, into this Yone because of the range advantage that she has with her passive. But as we look towards this bot lane, a really smart gank coming up from Wukong. They shouldn't have known that he's in the brush, but they must have spotted him out. And it looks like they were aware of Mr. Drex trying to find something there, and a flash out does mean that he won't... Wait, he flashed forward. I blinked and I misconnected. Okay, Mr. Drex flashed. And Poppy is fighting in this top side. So Raven is really low. He should be able to walk his way out of that one. Oh my gosh, so much damage from this Poppy, and it is enough to find the kill. So Raven, what are you doing?
Yeah, the grass proc coming in clutch there to give him the little bit of extra damage on that passive hit as, yeah, Sir Raven now 0-2 at 5 minutes almost into this game on this Yone. Definitely not what you want to see, and I feel like it's only going to get more difficult for this Yone because, like you talked about, Drake, this matchup is very advantageous for a champion like Poppy, not only because of the range advantage, but also because every time this Yone would attempt to go in, every time he wants to go in with, those Qs, he's just going to get blocked. He's not going to be able to go in with his dashes on this Poppy without getting stopped by the Vanguard's Edge, I believe is what the ability is called. And that is really going to be a thorn in his side now that this Poppy is especially ahead, has the Sheen upgraded for himself along with 2 cloth armor. So armor already coming in here for this Poppy this early into the game. Really looking bad for this Yone.
Yeah, not to mention the Sheen, the amount of damage that this Poppy will doing besides just with the grass procs. But looking outside of the top lane, we can also look towards this bottom lane where the Cloud Dragon has already spawned, and we were talking about J4 having the pressure in the last game. It looks like he has the pressure with his team in this game to be able to maybe fight for this dragon. It looks like he's moving towards the bottom lane, so that might be what they turn towards. And a push in by this Kaisa Alistar. No mana on the Kaisa though, so they probably don't want to fight it actually, now that I'm looking at it. We'll see. They are moving towards that dragon, but either way, the shove is advantageous for this Kaisa and Alistar for now. And as we move towards the middle stages of the game, this dragon was taken a little later than I think it was in the last game, so I think we're in a position where now the pressure needs to be put on quite a bit by this Poppy once she moves out of lane, in order for A5 to be able to find the pressure that they need to really stomp AA out of the game for now. I mean, in the early stages.
Yeah, and look at this bot lane. You can see Imaginary Champ and Dank Candle were going to go on to the Drake, but it did get interrupted by the presence of Crystal Fang and for a good time. But I don't know if they want to fight this, actually.
Ooh, ultimate comes out from the Aurelion Soul, and the dragon is so high HP that it is just going to be a fight 4v4 in this bot lane. Mr. Drex does end up securing the dragon, but he loses his life for that trade. Poppy gets a kill on the top side, and Alistar ends up picking the kill onto the enemy support, so Portal Combat in this bottom river. It's all up A5, not aces this time, and they do end up getting a dragon, but at what cost?
It really felt like an oversight there from Arctic Ace to go for that dragon. Sure, they had the shove on to the bot lane, but they were low HP. Prince was recalling with items in his inventory, so he was much stronger, and it also felt like, you know, the item advantage, I'm sorry, not the item advantage, the spell advantage of the Yasuo. That ultimate is much better in a team fight, especially because 1-100 hasn't given, you know, enough time for that falling star to, you know, become a lot bigger. So it only really hit one target. Wasn't really anything to fight for. It's really only the first dragon. I feel like if they give that, it's not the end of the world, but Arctic Ace find themselves falling behind in this game. Already 5-0 in kills, 2k gold down nearly 8 minutes into the game, and it feels like A5 have found their footing.
And I mean, talking about finding their footing and talking about the gold advantage in this game, I mean, the gold advantage is not only 2,000 in the lead for A5 at the moment, it is 1,000 for the Poppy in that top side, as well as nearly 600 gold for this Yasuo in the mid lane, and that's exactly where you don't want that gold to be divvied up if you are the side of AA. The Poppy's going to be unkillable, the Yasuo's going to be one-shotting everybody, and you already had a Kai'Sa to worry about. This is absolute disaster for the early game of AA, and it's exactly what we thought we saw spelled out in the draft with the swap of these teams' mentalities and just draft roles in the way that these champions play, right? We were talking about just the pressure that their champions have in the early stages, dropping so tremendously from that first game. As I'm speaking about that, the Wukong is in the mid lane, finds the first Cyclone, finds the second, and the ultimate does land from the Aurelion Soul, but it won't be enough to follow up. And once more, they just can't find the pressure that they need to be able to find, or at least like they seem comfortable finding after game one.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see that the top and bot laners have both decided to go for the swap, trying to get themselves, you know, just a little bit of difference here. But this time it is actually met by both teams. There was a little bit of delay as Sir Raven was able to just go in the bot lane on that Renekton last game. And Prince and Dank Candle were behind as... I don't know why we're going in.
Yeah, for a good time.
Never mind.
Okay, wow. Wukong actually ended up getting up the kill onto the J4, and Prince is next as the next target. Crystal Fang barely picks that one up and doesn't end up dying to the minions. I have to assume. Braum still facing that Alistar in the river, and nothing actually happening quite yet in this bottom side. So, all things considered, all things finished, 2 kills for free for the side of A5. Or sorry, AA.
I want to make a formal apology to Arctic Ace. I was not familiar with their game as they managed to find 2 kills to, you know, try and get themselves in this game. But Simon looking for a trade.
Yeah, won't be able to find much though, as yeah, so Aurelion Soul interaction is kind of wonky. But either way, that was definitely super good of them to be able to pick up 2 kills. Arctic Ace finding their way back into the game and getting the kills on the right people. Wukong, a champion that really needs to get ahead either by CS alone or by kills in the early stages to be able to make an impact, similar to J4, but I would argue even more, and really needs to get to that Divine Sunderer spike. And as we look towards the bot lane as well, Samira getting that kill, getting the Dirk, moving towards her first item completed is super influential. Astral Hailstorm, are you in the wrong side of... No, you have flash, surely you're fine. Actually, he's re-engaging. He doesn't quite get the body slam into the wall for a good time. Is definitely going to be able to walk out of that one. But, you know, an ambitious flash coming out from the Poppy, but if that connected, it would have been a kill for at least the Poppy or the J4.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, the only thing that got, you know, body slammed are my eyes, is that was really, you know, a kind of a scuffed combo. I respect Astro Hailstorm's attempt to go for it, but going back to sort of the itemization from this Samira, as
Astro
I don't
Hailstorm.
have a time to speak.
You just use that. You just use that ability. You You can't walk up. You don't have flash, man. You just used it. It's all right.
Another kill going over to Crystal Fang, but yeah, I really am not sure about this first item collector for Crystal Fang. It
Oh,
feels
it's
like
a
it
nightmare.
loses.
Oh, it's a
It feels,
nightmare.
yeah, we see a flash here from I'm sorry, Dank Candle. I keep thinking it's Dark Candle. It's Dank Candle. But yeah, this is going to be a first item collector here for Crystal Fang, and I'm not really sure I agree with that. This is a good item against, you know, champions that are rather squishy, and you do have a decent amount of squishy targets, but a majority of the really fed ones, you know, are in the front line. You know, Astro, Hailstorm is really not going to be affected by this collector, as we see a TP coming in from the Poppy.
Yeah, that's a very aggressive TP coming out from the Poppy, but the clone will be able to find Mr. Drex to safety, and he does have backup from this Asol very shortly afterwards. And Poppy trying to play the front line, but there's so many members of Arctic Ace. A huge knockup coming out from Sir Raven. He finds 3, and Prince will fall shortly afterwards. 2 kills for this Samira, a double kill, a third for the team. But Yasuo actually finds the ultimate, but it's nowhere near enough, as Simon44 Cool will find himself in the cool dirt. 4 kills for the side of Arctic Ace.
And weapons hot for the Arctic Ace as they manage to get their second dragon of the game. Crystal Fang coming out absolutely clutch in that fight. So much damage starting to come out from him on this Samira, but an absolutely huge wombo there from Arctic. The gigantic falling star. I'm pretty sure that was actually the Sky's Descend coming in there from the Aurelion Soul, followed up by the knockup, and Sir Raven with the Fate Seal. Just the combo of the Sentry to get themselves a second dragon, as it looks like A5 might want some revenge here.
The flash out does mean Sir Raven finds himself
he
nearly
wants
out.
it.
Oh, the Q3 isn't up, and whoa, really good. E actually finds himself to safety.
Wow, he got out.
Oh, so well played from Sir Raven.
Yeah, and the question marks coming out there from the red team. A little bit of BM disrespect from Arctic Aces. Yeah, they were really struggling in this early game. There was a 5-0 kill difference by the teams, but now it's 5-7 with Arctic Ace being on top here. Really starting to put this game in their favor as they're 2 dragons up here now, Drake. They're going to be able to find potentially a third one as this Aurelion Soul is continuing to scale, continuing to get stronger, and the Wombos are so scary from this red team.
Yeah, and I mean, earlier we were talking about 2 things. The game before, we were talking about impactful drakes. We were talking about drakes that really worked in the favor of one of the teams, and that was the Mountain Dragon. Scratch that, 744 Cool trying to find something in the mid lane, but it is going to backfire quite exponentially. He does end up falling, and 1-100 picks up his first kill of the game, finally getting a little bit more gold onto his belt. But what I was going to say is that we talked about dragons being very good. We talked about the Mountain Dragon being very good for them last game. Once more, they have an insanely good dragon for them in this game. The Infernal Dragon would be so impactful for their champions. And moving even further past that, we were talking about earlier on in this game that gold was on the right champions for A5. Well, the script has been turbo flipped, and the gold is on the right champions for Arctic Ace. We see a gold lead nearly for this Aurelion Soul, as I'm just going to ignore the Poppy fighting on my screen. And we see a 2,000 gold lead for the Samira in this bot lane. It is so dire, the position that this Kai'Sa is in. She's not going to be doing anything in these team fights, and it's all going to be on the Yasuo. It's all going to be on this Poppy, and I'm not sure that that's what you want to look for when you're looking for carry potential.
Yeah, I mean, you want the gold on this Kai'Sa, you want the gold on this Yasuo, and it just feels like both of those picks are really struggling in this game. They're not able to, you know, get the kind of damage off that they want to. This Kai'Sa really can't enter the fight at all. Entering the fight when you have champions like Wukong who could just cyclone you is really tough as an ADC, as the brothers are fighting once again, but no one is gonna die this time. No resurrections this time for Yone potentially. But yeah, this Aurelion Soul just continues to scale up. The gold feels like it's allocated in the wrong places for this A5 squad, as they want to give it to Prince, but he's 0-2 on this Kai'Sa. Like you said, Drake, he's just not able to do anything here in this game so far, and really he needs to, you know, find a kill, find a pick potentially with his team to, you know, start to get the ball rolling on this carry that he wants to become here to carry this game in game 2.
And it's at least a point of confusion for me. I guess if we look at the gold, Samira is sitting on 1,600, but on the map at the moment, Samira is currently about even in items with this Kai'Sa. So when we're talking about the state of the game, when we're talking about how hard it is for certain champions to fight against others, I think another impactful part of the reality of the gold state is, okay, what is happening? What is happening on my screen? What is this interaction? Okay, they ended up just shaking hands, saying, okay, we're gonna flex as much as possible and then walk away from each other. But I was gonna say that when you're slapping people with wallets, you have to actually be utilizing them to their fullest extent. And I think that's something that A5 can definitely look to capitalize on. If Arctic Ace stay on the map a little bit too long, they might be able to find themselves in a position where they can fight and even fight. And talking about even fights, we see the brothers. Yeah, round 2 in this bot side. Neither of them securing their Q3, but a...
Wukong ruined it.
Yeah, what was supposed to be a respectful duel had a monkey show up.
Yeah, and now Simon44 cool just continuing to struggle on this Yasuo, not really able to find, any avenue, to be ahead here in this game, as now Sir Raven is starting to get ahead as Crystal Fang.
Surely, okay. Ooh, blue buff.
Yeah, they're not able to get him. Not able to get him. The flash was good to go into the bush to deny that Cataclysm, and Mr. Drex was there. Cyclone was available, so I think if Imaginary Champ even went on that, he probably just gets honestly blown up. The cleanse is available as well in case he needs to use it. Obviously, you can't cleanse knockups, but yeah, for a good time, face checking into 2, but I think he's honestly going to be fine here as the Herald has been popped. Dragon is up, but A5 are so far behind, and the Sky's Descent is available. I really don't know if they want to fight this. This feels like a repeat of the last Dragon fight, Drake.
It's definitely going to be hard, especially considering that the Asol is able to flank in this position. And it looks like Arctic Ace are playing very comfortably. They're playing very slow and controlled. Braum flashing to get into safety, but at the end of the day, it's really good that they're taking this fight slow, right? But they need Asol to find an entrance, and it looks like Imaginary Champ is trying to find enough damage on the Crystal Fang, and there's enough follow-up as well. The flash was burned, so he is going to die. The shutdown goes over to the Yasuo, and for a good time, will not be having one this time either. 1-100 gonna look to try and clean up. Simon Cool is low. He will end up falling to Mr. Drex, and Wukong is looking for more, looking for another.
Look at Sir Raven!
Oh my gosh, is the game over? There's no way! Mr. Drex, is he gonna find him? He does have the sweeper! No way, the game is over.
No way they end the game here. They don't. The Herald is no longer up, but a quadra kill here for Mr. Drex, and oh my god, they managed to break open the base. Inhibitor taken, first Nexus Tower taken, and there's no one to stand between Arctic Ace and Soul Point. What looked like a really good fight initially from the Ascendant 5. They had numbers advantage, turned out to just be finding the remaining members of Ascendant 5 and just picking them off, stopping the backs. And overall, Arctic Ace, with the most random base take I have ever seen in my life, managed to make this a 5k gold deficit, 3 dragon deficit, and are looking to maybe make this into a 2-0 here, Drake.
It was definitely a very surprising turn of events in that team fight. But I think something to really notice was the fact that A5 found a capitalization. They found a scenario where Arctic Ace were disjointed. They were not connected in their positions. Wukong was not in that fight for the longest time. Aurelion Sol had to find a really awkward way into the river as well, and it put them in a position where they actually ended up winning that team fight in the early stages, right? Which was very good for them. And at the end of the day, even if you're behind, when you trade evenly, usually it's a benefit, but that, well, that wasn't an even trade.
Yeah, now Hullbreaker complete here for the Yone. He's just going full solo queue build in this game. So Raven does not seem to give an absolute crap about how this game is going. As Imaginary Champ got the blue buff, but might lose his life for that.
Nah, surely he's able to find his way out of that one. But Mr. Dex did do quite a bit of damage. Poppy is hanging out over here. Astro Hailstorm looking to just try and get some information. Maybe he can make something happen, but it is 1v5 in the enemy Baron pit. You did knock one out, but are you going to be able to find your way out of the fight? Actually doing really well to be able to disengage from that one, but all you're doing is annoying the heck out of the enemy team. They're still going to be able to secure the Baron. You have nobody on your team around to be able to do anything to help, and it will just be a Baron secured for the side of for Arctic Ace, and Yone just absolutely massacring the base in the bot side.
Mr. Drex might be in a little bit of trouble here. You can see 3 members trying to go for him.
There's no way. There's no way he can just BM like this. It's not fair. It's not fair. He doesn't have Cyclone. Okay, there we go. We killed him. Good job. Okay, really well done by A5 to be able to get that kill. Obviously, they lose Simon 44 Cool in the process, but they did end up getting that shutdown onto the Wukong, and it went over to the Yasuo, so a really, really impactful kill for them there.
Yeah, now they're just going to be able to push onto this top lane. You can see Prince, he's currently preoccupied trying to get the wave in the base already, but
Astro?
Astro, I don't know what that was. He's trying to go in, but this Aurelion still dealing a lot more damage than I think he was anticipating. But yeah, so far it has just been nonstop action ever since that third dragon was taken, and it feels like it's all gone the way of the Arctic Ace squad as they're just continuing to get objective after objective, win after win. Ah, man, this game felt like it was, kind of in anyone's hands in that third game. It felt like it was slightly leaned toward Arctic Ace, but they managed to just get so much gold into the pocket of Sir Raven and so much pressure now with that inhib completely gone in the bot lane. And now it just feels like they are, destined to almost get this next dragon. They have to answer the constant waves pushing into their base, and it just doesn't feel like they're going to be able to utilize as many members for this last fight potentially that could very well just decide the game.
Yeah, and I think that there's another reality in these team fights with regards to the way that they're playing out, right? Because obviously it's only a 5k gold lead, right? It's not really
Mhm.
that crazy. We've seen comebacks in team fights in other series and other tournaments where teams have come back from 13,000 gold leads, right? Or stuff that's absolutely even more insurmountable than that. But I think that the reality that we invested so much of our gold into very weird places for the side of A5 does mean that these fights just get insurmountably harder. We're looking at
Mhm.
the top side, right? Poppy building full armor. How are you going to deal with Asol absolutely one-shotting you, right? You can't, because we watched it happen earlier on. And until more
Yeah.
gold influx comes towards the side, okay, Raven, you're just dead. Okay, a really good
I mean, he
catch,
has the hull
possibly?
breaker available. He could outplay this.
No, there's no way this Raven outplays this. I don't believe it.
Nah,
Okay,
not
all
really.
right,
I
Poppy
was hoping.
itemized. Poppy itemized for Yone. So, it works there. But I definitely think that obviously you have to start itemizing for this Aurelion Soul. You have to start itemizing slightly differently if you want to start winning the team fights as a holistic point in a full 5v5 situation. So it does get very difficult when you've allocated so much gold towards that armor. As we're talking about that, Yasuo gets knocked up, and it looks like the mid laner for A5 is absolutely deleted. Dank Candle in this backline getting deleted by the A-Soul. So much Stardust. A double kill for the Dragon. Another kill going over to Mr. Drex, and it looks like one more will be looked for, but the Braum won't be able to find any more follow-up. Prince just has to be CC'd under his turret, burning away. And at the end of the day, you did lose 3 of your members, but it doesn't look like you quite lost the game. No, you lost. You lost the game, I think.
Well, it looks like Sir Raven is actually, TPing in. They might actually look for the end here. They have permission to do so. You can see that the inhib in the bot lane has officially respawned.
Good Poppy ultimate.
I really don't know if they want
There's
to
no
try and
wave.
end this game, but they're going
Oh,
for
but there's
it.
only one turret. There's no wave. There's no wave.
There's no wave.
It's a miscalculation. It was a missed input. Okay, Braum died.
The dragon is up, but they're at a the dragon is up, but they're at a numbers disadvantage here. This is Soul for the Arctic Ace. They could have just made this safe play. They could have just gone and fallen back to the dragon, but it looks like the Ascendant 5 are looking to capitalize on it, looking to capitalize on the overstay from Arctic Ace. And
no,
actually, as
imaginary
I say
champ.
that,
Imaginary champ miscalculating left and right, doesn't quite calculate what's going to happen to him if he entered that that part of the jungle, and it looks like 2 more members get picked up by this Samira. A double kill for the ADC, for Crystal Fang, and now I think the game surely has to be in dire straits.
yeah,
Oh, a huge knock
he
up!
manages to pick him up. Yeah, Prince gets picked up here by Sir Raven, and now it is 4 members strong. 2-0 in the most unexpected way, and the most unexpected game of all time. But Arctic Ace, they make it happen, and a 2-0 goes to them as they strike firmly in the first week.
I mean, absolutely stellar performance coming out from the Arctic Ace. We're looking at score lines across the board. You have a Wukong that is a Phil jungler, by the way. Phil jungler. Mr. Drex popping off, going 7-2-10 in that game. You look towards the mid lane, a deathless mid laner on the Aurelion Soul, a champion that is pretty prone to dying. I mean, he has a weird kit. You have to fly past people to get within near melee range, and you don't have any utilization of abilities to defend yourself, right? And then you're looking towards the bot lane, you see 7-1-7 on the Samira, absolutely monster performances from the carries of the side of AA in that game as well as in other games. And I have no words, Quacks. What an insane series.
Yeah, one insane series there from Arctic Ace. Almost felt like a statement series that even though they were down and almost counted out in that early game, they managed to, crawl back. They managed to win a really crucial team fight at that second dragon. And overall, it just felt like from there the game was theirs. But if we go to I believe the post game breakdown analysis, I mean, we can see sort of how the gold sort of swings in their favor. But I mean, you look at that and there is almost no swing. I'm not sure this is the correct game that I am seeing here. As yeah, this looks like the game one post game breakdown that
No, I
was
think I
almost
think we're okay,
entirely. Yeah,
right?
that was almost entirely.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
While we wait for that to go up, I guess we you can look at more of our beautiful faces. But yeah, overall, it just felt like it really was in their hands to win that game. But yeah, it just felt like just a gigantic throw. They were not ready for the Skies Descend. They weren't ready for the Wombo combo, and Arctic Ace, through the power of Wombo, managed to bring it back. And that split, the fact that it was a 4v5 2 on that third dragon fight, really just felt like it solidified the game for me. It felt like almost a game of solo queue after that point. And yeah, we can see the gold graph here very heavily in
Insane.
favor of the Ascendant 5 at first, about 4K gold up, but just after that second dragon fight, all the way down to just being in favor of Arctic Ace. So much damage coming out from that Aurelion Soul, 22.3k in the time that he had. And it was a relatively short game for a champion like Acel who loves to scale.
Absolutely insane performance coming out from Arctic Ace. I want to highlight that this is Exodia numbers for them. Apparently, we saw post game breakdown of game one. I was confused because I saw 23-10. I saw the exact same scoreline that happened in game two, and I thought, oh yeah, that must be the same game. It wasn't the same game, but it was the same numbers. Somehow they just seem to always win on 23-10. So that's a terrifying number if they start to approach it. We need to keep an eye out in future games. If that's happening, we just need to know that the game's pretty much done and dusted for the Arctic Ace. But yeah, coming back super well in the mid stages, absolutely popping off, and something that we were counting them out for, right? We were saying, oh, they didn't do well in the early game. It's going to be very hard to get back in, but they proved us wrong at every corner.
Yeah, for sure. And massive credit to Arctic Ace here in this series. Me personally, I did really think that it was going to be a 5 in a 2-1, but they managed to 2-0, despite the sub jungler, despite the filled support. Through all of these things, they managed to, persevere and go through a team that is, looked at pretty highly. These are all players that have played in Risen before. And so I definitely think it is a statement to the rest of the league on how good they can be, not even necessarily at full strength. They didn't have all of their starting players here. And yeah, I cannot wait to see what this team has in store as the season continues to progress.
I can't either. And I mean, even looking at the damage graphs, this Braum doing 7,000 damage and
Yeah.
the Alistar doing 1.8. I mean, just absolutely insane numbers coming out from all members of the Arctic Ace, honestly. And really well played by them. Obviously, the Yone keeping pretty much on par with the top lane matchup. Astro Hailstorm keeping his own with Sir Raven. And that's what I expected, to be fair, coming out from them. They both main pretty similar champions. So basically the same person, it seems like, in that top side. But
hmm
overall, as a team, Arctic Ace really coming together and absolutely popping off in their first game of a Risen season. Like, what an entrance!
Yeah, for sure. So can't wait to see what Arctic Ace do here. But I think that's probably going to do it from us today, Drake. So thank you everyone so much for watching an absolute banger
Oh,
series
I
to
think I think
oh,
halt.
wait, no. Wait,
I
no, I
we
forgot
heard
we
we
actually
heard
have
from
a post-game
production.
interview.
We have a post game interview. That might be it from us for now. I'm not sure.
Yep.
I believe we might be shooting to a short break before interview. I'm not sure. I'll wait to hear from production for that one. It seems like we can just get straight into that whenever we're ready. But yeah, I definitely thought it was an insane game, and I'm super happy to be here and for fall week one of Risen Dominate to finally be kicking off. I can't wait for future weeks. I'm not sure if we're going to be next week. I think we're alternating, so you guys will
hmm
not be seeing us next week after this interview, guys. But it's been Drake and Quacks. We've definitely had a great time, and if our production's ready, I think we're ready for an interview. I'm ready to interview.
Yeah, I'm ready to interview as
Looks like it
we
was Crystal
have
Fang,
Yup,
ADC.
Crystal Fang, ADC here from Arctic Ace after an absolute banger series. How you feeling after that, Crystal?
I'm feeling good. I mean, this is our first time that our team has joined a tournament, so this
Hmm.
is a great start, right? 2-0. Both of them were banger games. The second one, it was a little bit shaky at the starting, but we immediately took it back. So I'm feeling great.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess my first question toward you is how do you feel with your support? Because we obviously have a lot of well-known bot lane duos in this league. Do you think the fact that he is a main of another role, do you think that that takes away at all? Because he seemed like a really good support in this series overall. It felt like he was a main of that, and overall you guys seemed really solid. So when you guys were starting out, did that like deter you at all?
So For a Good Time is a really good friend of mine. I've played with him for years, and he is basically a fill player. He can play anything, any role, and that's like his specialty. So he can play support really well, and one of the key points for him is his communication. So
Mhm.
uh, even though he's not like that like suited into that role, like he isn't that he doesn't play a lot. His communication is great, and he leads the team. So having him as our support is a perfect fit.
I mean, awesome. And
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking earlier about how good you felt, right? You were saying that obviously it feels good to come up to the casters and get this interview right after a win, and especially it being your guys' first game and first series of any tournament, right? I was curious if there's any grievances with not maybe losing one, having something to learn from, and just generally coming out with pure wins, right? You won't be able to like reflect nearly as much, I would say. Or do you think that obviously you guys have a lot to work on just from stuff that you learned in that game?
Yeah, so we every single time we scrim, we almost win every single diamond team. But we but we versed up against like a master slash grandmaster team, and they like put us in our place. So
Mm,
we were able to learn from that. And they
Mhm.
were kind enough to like vote review with us. So this tournament is a learning experience, and we're also looking to win. So I think we're really set to win this tournament.
okay, big words
Yeah,
coming
let's
out from
go.
Crystal Fang. All right, bro. But
Yeah.
so then talking about moving on in the tournament and talking about I believe it's weekly games, right? Are you guys already prepping for your next series, or do you just take it week by week? Obviously, do a lot of scrims, maybe with teams outside of Risen. It sounds like, and just kind of deal with teams on the day.
Yeah, so we try to scrim weekly, and whenever the games happen, normally like a day prior, we just look at their Opera.gg and pre-draft and pre-plan what we think that they will do. For example, the drafts that you've seen, we already planned that out, and we kind of picked our champions beforehand, so you could see us picking like really fast. So we're well equipped to take on drafting. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, thank you so much for the interview, Crystal. It was an absolute pleasure watching you and the rest of the Arctic Ace squad play, and definitely can't wait to see and hear more about you guys. Because yeah, I'm honestly kind of rooting for you guys now because I feel like you guys can definitely go very very far just based off of that first series alone. So looking forward to hearing more from you, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, Drake, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So thank you guys all for watching. Thank you everybody who's been here. Thank you honestly to all of the players, not just Crystal. Literally every single player that we watched today, it couldn't have been done without you guys. So thank you all for giving us such good content, giving us entertainment, and for making Risen as good as it is. Right. So thank you to all the viewers as well as the teams and the coaches. Quacks, thank you for being here. I had a great
Mm-hmm.
time, and I believe that we will be back in 2 weeks. So we'll be back with week 3. You guys will be seeing Verdant Chaos as well as, for some reason, I can't remember the other name right now. But other casters is is the only way that I could put it in the next week of Dominate. So don't you guys go anywhere. We also have more action going on later on in the week. I believe next stream will be very, very soon. So you guys, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you guys next time.